How we doing? Ready to go?
Yep.
So welcome, folks, to the RATS session. We are, unfortunately, both the chairs are remote this time. And so thanks, Hannes, for kind of sitting in the chair and watching the room for us. We are also thankful for a couple of volunteers. So we have Usama and Michael who are scribing for us. So thanks for that. And we are going to get started. So just kind of some boilerplate here. So this is the note well. Please be familiar with it. It describes what your obligations are for participation in these meetings. A reminder of the code of conduct for everyone. Just be respectful and courteous. Make sure our discussions are impersonal. Keep in mind that our objective here is to provide solutions for the global internet that meets the needs of diverse technical and operational environments, and be, engaged and willing to participate and contribute. So appreciate your attendance. We have two notes takers. If someone wants to watch chat, that would be great. So in case there's someone who wants to raise their hand or get to the mic, it would be great if somebody would volunteer to do that as well.
Well, I can do that too. Just I'll
Okay.
put myself in the queue.
Okay, great. Just so you know, there's some materials, links if you're not familiar. There's links to that, and also some links for if you need technical assistance or otherwise. Those are in the chair slides. Are available for you to view offline as well. This is our agenda. We have 10 conceptual message wrapper, EAT measured components, followed by concise reference integrity manifest, followed by the PKIX attestation, followed by event stream subscription, and there's actually two topics mixed in there. And then we have an evidence transformations adoption, MUD-based RATS resource discovery adoption, and EAT attestation results adoption request. And that takes us to the full 2 hours. There were several other requests for time that we weren't able to accommodate. We will, however, plan on having an interim meeting to accommodate more topics, and we will try to get more time at the next IETF meeting. With that, thank you, and we will dive into our topics. So I'm going to give the clicker control over. And move to the next presentation.
Yeah. Hannes, I don't see the presentation.
Maybe I can't, hang on, maybe I can't do it if I give you the clicker control. Let me try to present first, second. Okay.
Works.
Works. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your wonderful Bangkok for those in person. Next slide, please. This is conceptual measures.
I gave you the clicker control. See if it works.
Oh.
Did it change? Did you click?
No, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Hannes, so can you do that for me, please?
Yeah, it changed it already.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Okay, so by now, I guess, nearly everyone should know what a CMW is, but for the benefit of the agnostic in the room, there's a quick recap here. So CMW stands for Conceptual Message Wrappers, and it's basically, at its core, it's a type and value wrapper for whatever RATS message you have. And it can be used to tunnel any RATS payload in any conveyance protocol. The idea is to present a we hope, coherent typing system, which is based on media types, which naturally extends to co-op content formats and seaboard tags in the TN space. For more details, I've linked a presentation we did at the CCC attestation SIG. So if you want to get the gory details, you just click on that and see in a bit more detail what this is about. Next slide, please. Okay, so there has been a lot of work on the draft since Dublin. We have tried to address the working group plus call feedback, especially a number of substantial comments that came from Lawrence, plus other feedback from Karsten, from Mike O, Jonas, Ayana. I feel like I'm forgetting someone here, but sorry about that. Anyway, in the past 3 months, we have merged 37 PRs and closed 26 issues, which is a lot. Next, please. So here's a selection of the finest PRs. We have 4 features. We went for the seaboard tag being in the TN space only, which was discussed in Dublin. We dropped the tunnels. Thanks, Lawrence, for pointing out the fact that they were not needed. We added signatures around the CMW. Again, thanks, Lawrence, for pointing that out. We needed some kind of security envelope around the CMW, and now we have 2, one based on COSISN one and the other one based on JWS. We added a bunch of privacy considerations triggered by Michael. We did, and this is, feature-wise, and then we had a few other interesting things around nomenclature and naming of things. A fix in the ABNF, which was thanks Karsten for finding that, because I could have stared at the thing for centuries without noting it. And we had another small but interesting fix in the max function to take care of the indefinite length case. Next, please. Right, so of the 28 issues, these 2 remain open, 169 and 154, which I'm going to discuss in the next slide, please. So 169, so we now define a CMW claim, which allows CBOR and JSON CMWs to be tunneled in quote and JOT respectively. However, it was pointed out that CMW might be a bit too coarse-grained when used in it, because there's no lot of semantics attached to it. So we identified a couple of options in the issue discussion. One is to add a specific CMW claims. For example, Lawrence suggested nested token with each submode semantics, basically. I guess we'd also want to constrain the CMW to only contain evidence or attestation results to comply with its scope. But this is sort of the idea here. Option 2 is to, yes, pursue that, but in a separate draft, which may also go into the details of how it and CMW coexist and cooperate, because I reckon this is an important topic in itself. And in fact, I would recommend the latter, because this is more about it and how it uses CMW than CMW proper. And by the way, I'd be happy to help drafting that document with Lawrence and anyone else interested. So any comments, agreement, disagreement on the recommended way forward?
Any feedback?
Lawrence is in the queue.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So to me, the collections is a very powerful aggregation tool for RATS messages that can be put into use for a myriad of things. I've referred to this as Pandora's open box. You could just put evidence in it. You could put evidence plus endorsements in it. It could be a surrounding thing for EAT or a subordinate thing for EAT, all sorts of things. So, and I've been trying to get my head around how to organize this in a interesting way, or useful way. I mean, I'm very much behind in favor of the structuring options of the collection. I'm just trying to figure out how to organize it. So specifically what I would be in favor here is to not define the CMW claim at all, but instead define a series of claims that are in the format of the CMW, that are collections, but they are for specific purposes. Just like we define, a bunch of different claims that have integers. CMW is just a type, it's not semantics. So if you want to define submods with a CMW collection, yeah, that's great. Let's do it in a separate document. But let's also drop the CMW claim from the CMW draft. So that, and recommend that as the semantics of different collections become apparent, claims be defined for them. That was a lot, I guess. So.
Thanks, Lawrence. Any other comments?
No other comments here. But Yogesh.
Okay.
No, I don't have a comment, but now that you have given me a chance, don't you think that adding claims into CMW would box it? Currently the CMW is like a nice wrapper, which will let you insert any rats message and create the bundle for that. This is for Lawrence, but maybe we can take it offline if it's less time we have.
We still have 2 minutes for this topic.
Okay, let's go forward then. Next slide, please. Okay, so 154, CMW and ASN1. So at the moment we define an X509 extension, IDPE CMW, that can be used to tunnel a CMW into X509, be it a certificate or a CSR, it doesn't matter. This is used for DICE evidence and in CSR attestation. And the idea here is, we discussed in the past having also a native SN1 CMW, and this has been floated a few times on list and in one-to-one conversation I had with the SN1 crowd, without enthusiastic responses. The options on the tables here are one, to add a full-blown ASN1 CMW, and we have a starting point that I shared a while ago in the wiki to start this discussion, and or to wait for a clear requirement, a clear signal coming from the SN1 crew, and do that in a separate document. Since no one from the SN1 community has asked for a full-blown SN1 CMW for now, and the IDP CMW extension is likely to be sufficient, at least for the use cases we have at the moment. My suggestion is to close this as a one fix. In my opinion, the document is the right size, and I would refrain from adding more stuff just for the sake of completeness, because otherwise we are never going to finish this. And I'm a great fan of incremental progress, and that would be my suggestion, to one fix here and wait for the requirement to become stronger. Any comments, agreement, disagreement?
Mike's in the queue.
So I'm in the queue, Mike Answorth. I'm in the queue because I want to talk about something totally different. I'm happy to go to the end. I don't know how that works.
Take yourself out and put yourself back in.
This Hannes. We have this. One of the issues is in dumping the whole CMW into the X509 certificate is that somehow the number of different attributes need to be controlled, because otherwise you end up having all these privacy problems. So I wonder whether in this case it's not, it's difficult to not define some specific attributes for X509. Instead of just dumping everything you have in there blindly and then assuming it would be fine.
Is that a question to Thomas?
I don't get this, Hannes. Sorry. What do you mean by dumping the whole thing? Because in both cases, either via ID, PE, CMW, or with the native ASN1 CMW, we would be dumping the thing, right? So, okay, I understand. So you want to control the ASN1 to be able to redact the attributes that you don't want to expose. That's your point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe that's so. The existing mechanism in the document is a way for certain use cases where you are not concerned about those privacy aspects. But then there has to be also specifically for the native ASN1 based encoding, that could be a way to actually define specific information elements that you want to put into an X509 certificate and be done with that. I'm not suggesting to do it in this document because you could hold up this document for quite some time. But I think that is probably the right way to do it.
Okay. Thanks. That's good feedback. Thank you.
Lawrence, you're in the queue. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, there we go. The option I would not listed here that I would propose is to drop ID, PE, CMW entirely. It's the only ASN1 thing in the document, and I just push all the ASN1 stuff elsewhere. The other reason I would like to see it dropped is because I think it has the same problem as the CMW claim, is it's this open-ended Pandora's box for putting stuff in. I'd rather see ID, PE evidence, ID, PE results, ID, PE, evidence bundle. So my request would be to drop this, just like dropping CMW, and push that off to separate documents.
Okay,
Mike?
Thanks.
Okay, so this is exactly the thing I wanted to come up and say. So I'm in the right place. Yeah, so I've been asked this question a few times by, for example, by Usama at the hackathon. So I'm going to answer it generally. People have come up to us and said, "Isn't this the thing that the LAMP CSR attest draft does?" And we've said, no. We decided that there's the privacy concerns of putting evidence or ARs into X509 is like full of sharp, spiky things, and CSR attest is CSRs, not certificates. So we made that very clear line, and we said we'll deal with X509 later because the privacy concerns are insane. But now, yeah, this draft walks along and says, here's an OID, do what you want. So I think I'm agreeing with Lawrence. Taking this out maybe makes sense if we're not sure we know how to handle the spiky edges. Second point, Lawrence, you just said, let's do an IDPE evidence, IDPE AR. We're defining those in PKIX attest, which we're presenting in like 5 minutes. So there is already a draft adopted that has those OIDs in it.
Hank?
Michael, or I'm sorry, Hank, but make it quick because we're over time by 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Hi, this is Hank. I'm quick. The CMW is conceptual messages, so it's all messages. So making them different claims is like a different problem. So maybe do this elsewhere. First of all, I think it's okay to do IDP to CMW in the other ID. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as it exists. Kind of defining an evidence bundle. or a collection evidence would be the right name today, seems curious, because that's not the purpose. That is something different. And maybe that should go in a third thing. I'm not entirely sure, but this is about conceptual methods, all of them. That's the point.
Okay, and just one note, a quick note, is that the CMW itself has a CM indicator, so you can specify the type of the thing that is inside the CMW.
Exactly. You can't see it from the outside. You just have to go one level and then you see it.
Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next step, we decide on the open issues. I think on list, because the discussion here has not been conclusive. And when done, we'll start a second working group. We will let the chairs know when we think we're ready for that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're up again, Thomas?
Yeah, still me. Okay, yeah, please. Next, EAT measure components. So quick recap again, a measure component is a measurable object in a target environment. Typically, you can associate it with some boot or runtime firmware, but it can also be, runtime integrity checks, files, CPU registers, anything, as long as you can associate a measurement to it. And what this document does is defining a measure component at the information level, and then derives a JSON and CBOR serialization that can be plugged into the EAT framework via the measurements claim. In theory, one can translate this info model into other kinds of data models, for example, ASN1, right, since we're talking about this a lot. But this is not in scope for the document. Maybe our ASN1 friends want to take a look and see if it fits their use cases, and if so, create an ASN1 instance of it. But here the data model we're targeting is EAT, and therefore JSON and CBOR only. Next slide, please. Right, so since adoption is 0.0, we had a number of reviews and comments from Giri, Lawrence, Karsten, Dionna, Michael, and Carl. Thanks very much, everyone. And we had a few PRs merged, and we published 2 new revisions. Next, please. Right, so changes here can be grouped into these 3 kinds, roughly. Technical, editorial, and features. We can skip, I think, over the technical and editorial and jump directly into the features slide because we don't have time, right? So, and Hannes, can you skip, I think, a couple of slides? The technical and editorial slide.
Clicker doesn't work anymore.
Oh.
Oh, now it goes.
Okay, this one, there are linked PRs and everything, so you can take a look offline if you want. Next one, please.
Nope. No.
This one too is boring. Slide 7, yes. Exactly, thank you very much. Okay, extensibility. The info model says that the format should cater for some extra semantics that is profile dependent. And for that, we added an optional flags attribute, which is 64 bits that one can organize into a, you can have a bit mask, or you can define your set of predefined code points and pick one from them, or something in that vein. Now, next slide, please. We could go one step further and make this mechanism even more powerful. If we remove the .size8 constraint, we can allow, richer, more complex, more structured information to be encoded into the extension area. For example, one could define their own extension as a map, encode it JSON or CBOR, and stuff it into the bytes as serialized CBOR or JSON. This way, one can have, the bit mask and the virtually unlimited code point space, but also you can have your structured information that is still opaque to the generic EAT processor and gets interpreted by the profile-specific processor. So the question here is whether there would be any objection going with this design instead of the limited. If anyone has any comments on this. Henk?
Yeah, I think bytes generic for JSON and CBOR makes sense, and it should go to a useful CDDL.
Awesome, thank you.
Carson's in the queue.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't get into a habit of dumping some bytes somewhere where you cannot find out what that thing is. So I think something like a socket where you can put in pairs of type identifiers and those actual byte strings usually works best.
Karsten, we do have a overall type identifier, which is the profile that embeds the thing. So we have a global type information available.
We have to be careful with this term type, because the type can be about the structure of something, or it can be about why is this thing there and what are you supposed to do with it, which is very different from the actual type. So I'm just trying to make sure that we don't dump stuff somewhere where we even may know how to decode it, but then don't know what to do with it.
Okay, yeah, we make sure that this is taken care of. Okay, thanks very much for the feedback. Monty?
Yeah, Monty Watson, Beyond Identity. Has anyone looked, I'll direct this at Ned and Hank maybe, has anyone looked at this and make sure it's compatible with the Trusted Computing Group's canonical event log, which is one of the things this would be directed at, to make sure that meshes, which is being adopted by Linux, to convey the Linux community, I should say, to convey the measurements as the system boots up. So it seems like this should be looked at and make sure it's compatible with that standard. Ned or Hank, have either of you looked at these?
I haven't looked at it, no.
Okay, I'll take on the action to review this, but until that review is done, I'd like to suspend weighing in on whether this should move forward or not.
Okay. So we're over time. I don't know if you can speed it up a little.
I can, I think. Next, please. So we have two open issues. One is purely editorial. The other one is a bit substantial, and I'd like to at least present it here, adding an SVN to the mix. Next, please. So SVNs are security version numbers. It's basically an anti-rollback counter that is used, for example, in Intel TDX and AMD SCV SNP. There was a brief discussion in the context of EAT. I think the issue is 111, but at the time it was dropped. And one reason it may have been dropped is that the natural scope relates more to the measured component, so a portion of the overall TCB rather than the global. At the global level, right? So the entire TCB, and this makes it less suitable as a separate claim. But here we are, narrowing the scope, and therefore there might be some room for it. Next, please. If, big if, we want to pursue this, there are a few options which are listed here. We can discuss this maybe on the GitHub issue because we don't have time. If the working group feels that SVN are valuable addition to the mix, otherwise we will close the issue and just go on. Let us know, please, because if we don't hear anyone, chiming in and saying, yeah, we want the SVN, we will just drop it. Okay, next, please. I think this is the last one. Yeah. So next step, sort out the extensibility, and I heard, very, very good feedback from Hank and Karsten and Monty. And then let's take a decision on the SVN topic and go for working group. Let's go. Thanks.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll do that on the list.
Yeah.
Got those issues, and the working group last call will also be a list item.
All right, thank you. We're
just
4 minutes behind, so you caught us back up a little bit as Ned's getting the slides. Could I add that so we had awareness of timing?
So next up is Khurram Yogesh. And it looks like you're remote.
Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have good IETF 122 in Bangkok. So I'm going to talk brief present about the amount of work we have done in Corim. To start with, I would like to introduce Corim. As most of the people in the room knows, Corim stands for Concise Reference Integrity Manifest. Is used to supply reference values, and endorsement is a data format in CBOR to supply reference values and endorsed values to a remote attestation verifier. Next slide, please. So it's just heartening to inform that while we are in the process of completing the spec, this is the list of organizations which have already embraced this standard. So the list, I'm not going to go into detail of each, but an important note is the note in the bottom. And OCP, if you follow some of the standards, OCP is Open Compute Project, is a standards body contributed by 400 plus member organizations in open source, and it is developing standards for data center related to data center security, data center power, and all the related to server. And they have also embraced Corim. So it's really in full implementation in multiple organizations and standards bodies. So next slides, please. Yeah, so we really need good review of the document because the document is big, and we really need feedback to understand that we are on right track. Obviously, there has been some reviews in the past, but we want to increase the numbers. And ideally, the way to do it is to go through the working group last call. That is really needed. Plus, it would be great to have some additional directorate reviews, whether it is security, ART, or ops reviews. So this is really a request for reviewing the document. Yeah, next slide, please. So I'm now going to explain in limited amount of time and limited number of slides some of the changes we have done in Corim from the last ITF back in November. So a lot of work has been done, a lot of active contribution from the community in Corim as well, from Google, Intel, and many more. So we have 67 issues closed. So a lot of issues, backlogs, duplicates, tidy up was quite extensive, and a lot of changes went in. So we merged 35 pull requests. And as the draft is closing, nearing maturity, the number of new issues are slowly declining. So again, as I said, a lot of work, and document is gradually moving towards maturity state. So next slide, please. So I'm going to summarize in few slides what are the major, these are the main enhancement which adds additional information or value to the document. So we have a bunch of triples, around 8 or 9 triples. So we thought of splitting it into two buckets, MTI and OTI. I will discuss about that in the subsequent slide, the mandatory to implement and optional to implement. What are they and what it means? And then we have a use case where somebody would ship the unsigned Corim itself as part of a wider context or a wider container. So I will talk about that. In addition to that, we have tidied up the raw value representation in the Corim draft. And for that, we have added the matching rules. How, if a raw value of the new format is specified, how do you do the matching? And then what we realized is that the cryptographic keys, whether it is for attestation keys, attestation verification keys, or device identity keys, they were not internally represented. So whether they are appearing in the claims or in these triples, how to match them, how to do comparison. So that has been adequately explained now with examples, CDDL, CBOR diag examples. And then for each of these extensible maps in Corim spec, we have added IANA registries to all the extension points. So these are the main enhancements to the document this time. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, MTI versus OTI, what does it actually means? MTI stands for mandatory to implement. This is our guidance or advice to the implementation of the profiles based on this document. that these are the mandatory triples you must implement, or it's advised to implement. These are only three things. Reference value triples convey reference values, endorsed value triple convey endorsed values, and conditional endorsement triples is a more specific instantiation of endorsement triple where you specific revision of measurement, you supply some endorsements. And optional to implement, of course, I'm not going to go in detail about what each of them are, but here is the concise list of optional to implement. So a profile may mandate an OTI as optional to implement as mandatory, but it is normally not advisable to kind of skip the mandatory to implement triples, and one should implement it for completeness of the profile. Next slide, please. Another big change is a new requirement coming from few of the organizations who are actively working with us is the usage of quorum in some other relevant context. Like here is one example. What we are showing here is the unsigned quorum is the one single authority is shipping multiple profiles. Say, let's say one profile for MD7 SNP, one profile for CCA, each being shipped by a single authority to one of the verifiers. So how could we do that? Since quorum is really the quorum profile is at the profile level, at the outer level, one cannot really stash two profiles in a single quorum. So the best way to express this model was to take two unsigned quorums, put it in a CMW, and this is a very good use case where how CMW would help another RATS message like concise reference integrity manifest to be manifested in a bundle. So we take the unsigned quorum, tag it, and then we put a CBOR in the middle box. We put a CBOR representation of these two quorums, bundle it, and we have a top outer level tag self bundle. And then once each the collection is constructed comprising of the two quorums with a tag, each one of these also has a tag TBD1, TBD2, which needs which can have any number. Then you construct that CBOR payload and then wrap it using COSE sign 1 signed CBOR CMW. So the protected, unprotected, and signature on the payload is all standard COSE sign 1. So this is how there are other use cases also, like supplying unsigned quorum in a TLS message using the TLS security. But for all of this, we need unsigned quorum. So we introduced adequate explanation of how to use it, and this is one example coming from the real world use case. Next slide, please. Apart from that, there were some major improvements. Last time, Hannes had a comment about there is no clear definition of terms, key terms. So thanks to Thomas, he added a very unique glossary describing each relevant terms used in the quorum draft. Then there was comment about there is no proper context for each of the triples. So for each of the triples, we have added a proper explanation of what each triple means, how what it conveys. Then from Hannes, we had a comment last IETF session about COBOM. COBOM sounds like SBOM, or which was not the case. So we renamed it to COTL. What is COTL? COTL stands for concise tag list, and we have added example in CBOR diac to explain how to use it. And apart from that, we tidied feedback from previous IETF. We tidied introduction to make the sense of what is the purpose of the document, and and in addition, we have removed extensibility of COTL map, because COTL map is a list of tags, and if you want to introduce something else into the list, then you can assign an ID to your entity, like a COSWID is already there. But if you want to add like a bill of material, software bill of material, you can assign an identity which is similar to a tag ID. You can map it as a tag ID and extend the tag ID. Tag ID is extensible, but the map itself is not extensible. Yes. And in addition to that, we have security and privacy consideration section we have enhanced thanks to Henk. He has enhanced it to introduce how do you protect the identity if the identity is of the attesting environment represented in evidence claims. So these are some of the major improvements. Next slide, please. So I'm very much on time. I've been given 10 minutes. I'm bang on target. So all we are requesting is a mass review of the document to provide feedback. And now I would hand it over to Kathleen or Ned for the WGLC.
So I'd like
Yeah.
to see how many people would be willing to do a review before we do the working group last call. So we have a few. Can we commit to a time frame so that we can hold to that, get those reviews in, and then see the state of it, and then begin a working group last call? So we had at least two. I saw Michael.
Yeah, it was Monty and Michael.
Okay, great. What time
Monty
frame
and
could you
Michael.
both commit to?
Michael.
Could somebody say it at the mic? We can't hear you,
We
remote.
can't hear the conversation in the room.
Monty, maybe Mike.
Okay, what time frame can they commit to? Is this for their plane rides on the way home, or?
Yeah. This is Hank on the mic. So how is this different from starting a working group last call? I mean, that would also start the exact same amount of reviews. Might be even more because people might like, no, maybe this should not start to get published. So
Yes,
how
thank
is
you.
that different?
Thank you, Hank. Yep, great question. It would give us a couple more reviews that might have more edits and might further the document a bit more if we were to get these in and updated before it went to a working group last call. Driving towards the objective of what a working group last call is meant to be, not just following the pattern of, well, let's just do a working group last call to get everybody to scramble. So if we get a couple of reviews that are really meaningful, then the working group last call can be even more meaningful. So I appreciate two people volunteering, but I would like to know, Michael and Monty, is this 2 weeks, a month? What is your time that you could get this done?
What is? Yeah, it's in the notes, he says, Michael.
The notes say April 15th.
April 15th.
Okay, so a month. So how about we do that? That way, Yogesh and Hank and whomever else can get your good, meaningful feedback, and then we can do a working group last call, which should have a lower level of feedback, ideally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is PKIX key attestation with Mike. Since you're in the room, Mike, I'll let you run the clicker. How's that?
Yeah. Delegate to the clicker. I give him the clicker.
Okay, I will try and be respectful of time. I have more slides than I plan to present. So I'll skip the back half of my slides. What I want to do with this presentation, so this design team has been meeting for a year and a bunch. We spit out the LAMPS CSR test work, and that's great, and that's gone. And now we're working on the next problem, which is CSR test says if you have an attestation shaped thing, here's how you put it in a CSR. And now we're looking to standardize an attestation shaped thing, which is standard. We, the design team, is a group of HSM vendors, so we're building a thing specifically for ourselves, and we've scoped our problem way down to things that are sort of roughly PKCS 11E in shape is our problem domain. Now, I'm aware that what we are doing is colliding the PKI and PKCS 11 world into the RATS world in a way that is terminology hell, and that our information model makes no sense to half the people, half the time, all the time. So what I want to do with this presentation is not even touch what we're doing in the draft, but just explain why we're doing the draft in the first place. Because we've had a lot of review comments. That RATS mailing list that blew up, I think, is because what we're trying to do doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So let me try and explain what we're trying to do. So terminology, what is PKIX? Terminology, what is key attestation? And then section 2, I'm not going to get to because we don't have time. Good. So clicker, terminology, let's diagram a sentence. PKIX. PKIX is intended for hardware and software that operates within PKI applications. Key attestation is assertions about the current protection properties of a given application key. So we are doing assertions about the protection property of an application key for hardware and software that operates within PKI applications. That is the domain we're trying to solve a problem within. Let's break this down. What is PKIX? Public Key Infrastructure Extensions. It is the broad category that covers X509 and all this other stuff that exists to support X509, CMP, SCEP, EST, CMC, CRL, OCSP. Sometimes SMIME is considered part of PKIX. Sometimes PKSS11 is considered part of PKIX. Sometimes the entire suite of PKCS specs are. So we're sort of fuzzily, nebulously, this whole ball of things is what we're calling PKIX. And in particular, the hardware that's designed, like the HSMs, they're designed to support these sort of applications is our target. That's what we mean when we say PKIX. What is an HSM? An HSM is a hardware security module that holds keys for you. It is a device that exists to hold keys and to use those keys for you, so you never have to get your hands dirty touching keys. You have some plain text, you want it turned into a ciphertext, you want your AES key to never have to come out of the box. An HSM will do that for you. It comes in all sorts of shapes, from big rack mounty things to PCIe cardy things to smart cardy things to little chips that slide around your motherboardy things. All of these sorts of things are in scope. Usama, do you want to interrupt me or do you want to go at the end?
So I just want to clarify. So you had the definition of the PKIX. I just want to ask you whether this is coming from some source, or is it your own opinion, or is it based on something? Where does it come from, all of this?
I made up this slide.
So this is your own opinion of what is PKIX, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say yes.
Right. Thanks.
Sort of informed by 2 years of work on this design team and the problem space we're coming from as vendors operating within sort of these spaces. It's not a formal definition. It's a very fuzzy definition.
Okay. So yeah, so PKIX is going to refer back to the working group for people like me.
Correct. The working group and the applications surrounding the stuff that working group worked on.
Okay. All right. I'll pay more attention to it when I reread.
Very fuzzy. I'm just trying to. The reason here is people have said, why did you title your draft PKIX attestation and not HSM attestation or not some other? So why did we put the word PKIX in the title? I'm just trying to motivate why we think PKIX is the correct scoping and HSM is the wrong scoping and other things are the wrong scoping. Why is it not ASN1 attestation? Well, we think PKIX is the right. So I'm trying to build an argument here. So why is HSM not the right term? Why did we not title this draft HSM key attestation? And that's because there are two broad families of HSMs. There's HSMs that support PKI applications, which are often called general purpose HSMs, HSMs that do all of that PKIX stuff, versus financial services HSMs that do specifically the EMV, like financial card computations. And those are a completely different category of devices, also called HSMs. We are only trying to target this first category. That is our scope for this design team. So I've drawn a picture of a super typical use case. You've got a smart card with an RSA key on it. That's our HSM. It's supporting, for example, a TLS client, and it's doing TLS client authentication. Like, this is a very typical use case of the type of device that we're trying to do attestation for. Other things that also fit this category. So here's a long list of things that we consider PKI applications. Here's a sort of shorter list of things that we consider PKIX-shaped HSMs, and any of those things can support any of these applications. This is what we're defining as our problem domain, and we're trying to do key attestation within the problem domain of this slide. You want to prove where the key for this PKI thing lives and how it's protected. And all of these things, you can just take that picture in the top corner and substitute some words and they all look pretty much the same. What do I have on my next slide? Mystery to me also. Did I skip one? No. Okay, so then what is key attestation? So we've that's the PKIX part of this sentence. So then the key attestation part of this sentence is evidence containing properties of the environments in which the private keys are generated and stored. For example, a relying party may want to know whether a private key is stored in a hardware security module and cannot be exported in clear text. This is a definition from the glossary in our draft. So we're trying to attest to the properties of a key. If you smush all of this together, all of the last 9 slides together, what is a PKIX key attestation? And this is the this is the architecture picture from our draft, you end up with something that looks like this. You have an HSM, which is a RATS attester. That entire HSM box, including all the stuff inside it, is the attester. You then have this thing called a presenter. A presenter would be any of those PKI applications from a couple slides ago. A TLS client would be an attester. OpenSSL generating a CSR would be an attester. I apologize, a presenter. Yeah, the OpenSSL generating a CSR would be a presenter. Your Outlook application signing SMIME email would be a presenter. It is trying to present something to a recipient. The usage protocol would be TLS or SMIME or whatever. So the point I want to make here is the presenter is not in the RATS architecture. Presenter does not have a definition in 9443. It is a new role that is important for us to define here to understand what we're trying to do. The recipient includes both the RATS verifier and the RATS relying party. So we're like a little bit outside the definitions in the RATS architecture, which is partly why this discussion has been so difficult. Usama.
So, Dresden. So you mentioned in the beginning that there is a terminology hell. And I am going to claim that you are creating more of this hell. So you are creating your own definitions, and which are not coming from the literature, that's based on your own experience, and that is basically adding to that hell. So what I would propose is to look at the literature a bit more. So what is key attestation? If you go back one slide, so how does that make sense? Because to me, it's only workload attestation or platform attestation. What exactly is key attestation? Can you differentiate that from the two concepts?
There's no workload here. And the platform is part of key attestation, but not all of it. If you can find me a term in the literature that is this exact concept, I'll happily take it.
Where in the literature? Can you point me to?
You are telling me to look at the literature. Please provide me literature.
Okay, I can look into it, but I mean, my point was basically you should look into the literature, or the design team should be looking into the literature.
Where should I look? Please tell me where to look.
Okay, I can.
The literature is an incredibly large thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you are defining some terms which are not consistent with what we are aware of, and it's adding to the
Well, I'm not
terminology.
aware of a term that means this.
But it should be clear, like, well, that's not of the environment. So that's somehow not related to the environment. You said there is no workload. So what is that environment? What does exactly that environment mean?
It means this.
So how is that different from a workload?
There's no workload.
Where you have the key. So there is something that is protecting that key, right? There is some environment which is protecting the key.
The HSM is the workload.
Metal.
Right?
Physical metal.
So how is it different from a simple environment which we are aware of, let's say SGX, environment protecting the key which within that workload or generated within that workload? How exactly is that different?
All right, so I think this may be better on the list. I agree with Usama, more research is needed. I'm just want to make sure that we're using our time productively since we're so tight tonight, or whatever time it is. So Mike, I can help a little bit on some of the terminology, having been a PKIX participant, and I think I can help with some of the differences here. So we can do that between meetings. And I also had a problem with some other of the terms, but I didn't want to put it on list because I want to give the HSM draft people time to present something, because there might be more alignment once they put their draft forward.
Okay. Another path here is that we just take this work out of RATS. We just agree that this is different enough from RATS that we just take it to a different working group, or maybe we take it out of IETF. That is the thing that we very seriously discussed in the authors group. Like,
no,
it's a productive way forward.
So as a Q, I don't think you have to do that. I think there just has to be some help on the terminology pieces. And then this working group is going to have to learn some of the PKIX ones to be able to come together on those, right? So you don't have to change all of yours to fit everything for this working group. that's an entire body of work. And so I'll help with you. I'll help you with that.
I probably could just end here if I'm out of time. I think this has done what it needed to do.
You have some time. Yeah, I think you have until 5 after.
Oh, great. Hank?
Yeah, just
Hank
saying
Brevity
that this is not the slides that I remember from Sunday. So I'm adding what I'm missing. So the presenter, yeah, is not kind of a RETS thing, and that caused maybe some confusion, but it should be maybe. Because a lot of RETS roles have this insufficiency that they need a helper role. Like when you look at some of the models, that there's a background check model on the passport model, and then there's something relayed. There's evidence sent to a relying party, and the document says a relying party doesn't consume it. So there's a helper role. Here's the presenter that it helps you to provide things to the recipient, which is again the verifier and the relying party. But it is also just a helper aid. So we were discussing common patterns of these helper roles. And we're having the working title agent for them, that basically every RETS role might need a helper role to conduct some logistics. So maybe the presenter would fit into that model. I'm not making that dependent on that definition, so don't fear delay.
No,
I'm just highlighting
You're
this
good.
is yet another instance where we can see that this would be helpful. Maybe we should do a dedicated work on that inspired by this work. That's all I'm saying.
So one thing that as we've been developing this work and we've been writing the reference implementation, one thing that we find is helpful is that request. And so we're defining or trying to figure out how to define a request format so that the presenter can say, because the presenter knows what it's trying to do. The presenter knows the protocol, the presenter knows its security requirements, it knows its privacy requirements. We want the presenter to be able to query the HSM and say, give me an attestation that includes these claims and does not include those claims. I want an attestation that does not include hardware serial number because the person I'm trying to present it to isn't allowed to know that. That's part of the scope we're trying to do here, is this interaction between the presenter and the HSM, which I think is also sort of weirdly not part of the RATS architecture, which is really a sort of waterfall-y thing. I see the queue has grown. I'm just going to quickly do the design. So the stated design goals of the design team. We want a trusted assertion format for describing common vendor-neutral attributes of PKIX HSMs. So there's that scoping to PKIX HSMs, and we're trying to distill out what is common functionality across multiple vendors. This must be ASN1 because that gets maximum reuse of existing components within HSMs. The attestation key must be an X509 certificate. We're not considering any other formats for attestation keys. And the PKI application, which we're calling the presenter, gets to request a fresh attestation containing, gets to request exactly what it wants from the HSM inside that attestation. Q, Yaron.
I'm not sure, you might have just answered my question, but I'll ask it anyway. So the definition to me is clear, but I'm not sure to what degree it's useful, in the sense that the so-called presenter is often, I mean, if that's the TLS stack, for example, then your entire security depends on the TLS stack much more than it does on the actual protection of the key. And similarly, if you're signing a PDF document, again, the operational considerations and so forth of the presenter are central to your security. So is there really value in defining just key attestation detached from everything on top of it?
Sounds like you want example use cases to motivate this design.
Probably.
Fair.
Maybe.
Hello. Just a question. Is the attestation key the key being attested, or is it another key used just for attestation?
Excellent question. So an HSM exists to hold keys on behalf of another application. Like an HSM exists to hold the TLS key or to hold your email signing key. We do not, the attestation key, the key that signs the evidence, is not on this picture. It probably should be. It would live inside that attestation service box. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, I think I will end here. I have slides on what we were proposing as a format, but I think I don't have time. And I really just wanted to, the thing I wanted to do live was to try and clarify what we're attempting to do. And people can review the document if they want to comment on the specifics. So I think I've done what I wanted to do, is hopefully progress this terminology hell discussion.
Okay.
You
yeah,
do
technically
have
you had
5 minutes.
Yeah.
What do I have next steps? Yeah, out of scope. This we mentioned during Tomas's presentation. We're not doing X509 extensions. Data model, data model, data model, data model, data model, data model, data model. Request format. Next steps. This is basically the next step. Say this is an OO where we have work to do on all aspects of this. Ta-da! We meet every 2 weeks. This is being actively iterated.
Osama. So just a clarification question on the last 2 questions by Yaron. And was it the case that, so there are 2 keys, one the attestation key and one which is used for the TLS identity key. And I just want to be sure. So which one you said that's the attestation key is the one which is signing, right? But there is also the TLS identity key. So which key are you exactly attesting? Did I get it right that you are saying attestation key is the key which you are attesting, or basically the key attestation is referring to the attestation key, not the TLS identity key. Is this right? Or is this both?
Here's how I think of it.
Yeah.
I have an HSM today. I can go into my Linux terminal and I can connect to it using some proprietary driver from HSM, and I can say, describe yourself. And it's going to print me out this JSON blob, which is 1,000 lines long. And it's going to describe, maybe the device has 6,000 application keys in it, separated into tenants with access control rules and blah, blah, blah. I want that data in a RATS object. Describe your current state, describe your software level, describe all of the 1,000 keys that you're currently holding for various applications. Some of them are TLS keys, some of them are code signing keys, some of them are whatever, CA keys, CRL signing keys, everything that's inside this piece of metal. Tell me about it. And it will have an attestation key, which was put in the HSM at manufacturing time. So like these devices come off the shelf empty, right? They come off the shelf from the factory with an attestation key in it from the manufacturing facility. And otherwise they have no keys. And then as you use them, they will generate keys for various purposes and whatever. Yeah. It's tell me about all the things that have been generated since this thing got plugged in.
The attestation key is the same definition from the RATS architecture.
Right. To summarize this, basically you are saying the HSM is so at the manufacturing time, the attestation key was embedded into the HSM already.
Yes.
So any keys that you use for the application for TLS and whatever the number of keys you have, you put it in and it will protect you. And that the attestation key then will provide you the attestation evidence.
Yes.
That all of these keys are protected. Will sign the evidence that all the keys are protected within that HSM. Is this right?
Or not, like depending on the application semantics. Like for TLS, you are not going to report all the application keys that are stored on the device.
Well, exactly why we want the presenter to be able to request, because the presenter knows which key.
So there was a comment that was off the microphone. Could you restate the question?
Hannes or me?
Oh, is Hannes' microphone not on?
Hannes.
Yeah, I am restating Hannes. So if the HSM holds 1,000 keys for 1,000 different tenants and whatever, the TLS library that's using it will know I'm currently using key 14. I want an attestation for key 14. That's why you need a request format to tell it, you're a large device with lots and lots of things on it. What is the one thing or the 2 things that I'm currently using that I want attestation for? Is sort of what Hannes said.
Right, thanks.
You have 1 minute.
I think the point here is that HSMs are devices that exist exclusively to hold keys. They have no other purpose, unless JP wants to object to that.
Yeah,
Whereas like in RATS,
2 people in the queue in 1 minute.
To do something. Your device is a network card, or your device is memory, or like your device does something. HSMs don't do anything other than hold keys. So tell me about the keys you hold is the thing we're trying to attest.
One question I had was regarding the presenter role. I'm not very convinced that it should be a separate role, because you can fold it in the relying party, because it's ultimately the relying party who can request for such kind of an attestation request. So
No,
I'm not convinced about that.
no. So what's a good example here? I'm going to do a different one. So I generate a key. I'm using OpenSSL on my laptop to talk to the HSM. I generate a key. I'm trying to generate a CSR to send up to a publicly trusted CA. OpenSSL is on my laptop is not part of the CA. The CA is the relying party in this case. The presenter is not going to parse the attestation at all. It is bytes. It just goes through the presenter. It never looks at it. Calling that a relying party is extremely weird.
So relying party also doesn't process the attestation. It just relays the attestation to the verifier.
But then gets an AR back and does something with it.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
no round trip back to the presenter. So what is it relying on? It's a forwarder. It's a proxy.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
John,
John Geeta, Data Trails, should be a quick one. So don't answer this now, but I'd like to join the call. So whenever they are every 2 weeks, advertise that. Just a quick one on the, great. On the keys, is the plan to have some sort of hierarchy so that an entity with a fleet of HSMs that are somehow configured can present a single identity that then many attestations are backed by?
This whole data model section that I skipped.
Yeah, it's got that in.
Go read it and please give
I'm on the
suggestions.
GitHub already. Okay, great.
Okay, you done?
Yeah.
All right. Next up is reference interaction models. And since you're in the room, Hank, I'll give you control of the clicker.
Hi, this is Hank. I have a clicker. I hope to give you back time because my slides are lofty. Yeah, we have a document called Reference Interaction Models in the REDS Working Group. That's been there for a while and it has been tinkered with, I want to say, for a while now. Clicking the clicker. Oh, no, damn it. No, way too much. Clicking the clicker. Yeah, basically, we got several reviews now. So over time, especially since last IETF, Thomas Hannes Usama added, Thomas, like amazingly a ton, I have to point that out. Review, feedback, and we created a gazillion of PRs and corresponding issues about that. I think that was the request last time. Please solicit some early review so we can issue the working group last call. I would like to declare victory on the first part and ask for the second part, basically. Are there any things, any objections to start a working group?
Thomas is in the queue.
I fully support going to working group last call. I think the document is in good enough shape now for the working group to take a deep look into it. And thanks, Hank, for addressing all my tedious comments.
Yeah, well, it was fun. I think Usama's at the mic.
Yeah, so I didn't get the chance to, let's say, I had given the responses. Let's not pretend that the delay was from our side. So the delay was months of delay from your side. So the comments were posted way back, I think, in December.
Yeah, you had the
Anyway,
7 question categories, basically, right?
But I mean, I didn't get responses for until 1 week before the IETF was scheduled. But anyway, so I had a quick look at the comments. They looked reasonable to me, but I didn't go through the whole document because that was a very short time that was given.
Yeah.
So I will have a look at that and I will provide if the concerns are sufficiently addressed or not.
Exactly. So if anything is still amiss, I think that can be cleaned up during a working group call.
So one thing that I didn't mention in that comment and then came up later on with discussion with Thomas was that the figures were not clear. If I was looking at the figure from the, let's say the relying party, so now you have 3 roles. It was not clear who exactly is the originator of that specific message. It was for a specific diagram, which I have to figure out which one it was. But for a specific work, I was trying to look at into whether this message is coming from, let's say, party 1 or party 2. It was not clear because there was no convention shown exactly. If I follow one convention, it meant something else. If I follow the other convention, it meant something else. So there was an ambiguity in the figure itself. So I will point that out.
I think that actually Mike could also address that. If there's still some concerns with it, we have the so if we are too prescriptive in the model, then referencing it and then molding it to your own needs where you're doing the specification for an actual protocol becomes larger overhead.
No. I didn't mean that at all. I just mean that it should be clear from the figure. If you have 3 roles, it should at least be clear whether the message is originating at party 2 or party 3. That's what all I'm saying. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but just have a look. I think this has been cleared up.
So this should be really clear in the figure that
makes sense.
Exactly.
So I thought you were about initiating the whole procedure. Sometimes you start with A, but then you have a thing that triggers that before, like a call home or whatever. We are not doing that.
It was just that who is the originator of the message.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that has been addressed. Yeah, so that is also quite maybe a question to the chairs. Are you comfortable with starting that working group last call? Not you.
So how many folks have read this?
In the room, it seems to be 4, plus the people that are on the list, plus everybody that made an issue. I think there are like 2 people that made issues that are not directly here in the room and on the list that I remember. So approximately 7 to 8 really invested reviewers.
Yeah, and you've mentioned names for people.
Yeah. I learned to do that, so that there's some trail, paper trail.
Is there anybody on the call in the meeting that feels like they need some time to review it? Wants to review it?
I can review it.
Again, raise the hand. Monty?
I can review. Ned, I can review it.
Monty, Yogesh, okay.
Yeah.
And Yogesh just... but Yogesh, you were also on the previous list. That's fine. You're an author. I'm kidding. That's good too. Sorry, we're mixing up the IDs. You're not an author. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so it seems like there's interest in having some time for people to review. Is a couple of weeks enough time?
I would say 3 weeks of working group last call are fine. Maybe if you don't feel comfortable, you can extend, I guess.
We just want to give them enough time that they feel that they're not rushed.
Yeah.
But not so much time that it.
So this is not about 1 week. So that is fine.
Yeah, no. I'm saying a couple of weeks enough, or would you rather have 3? But 2 or 3, I wouldn't want to go to 4.
2 is fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, working group last call can last as long as you want, actually. But I think 3 to 4 weeks is like.
Yeah, we want to get the last bit of reviewers' feedback in, and then we can start after that.
I see. You don't want. I see. No, I get.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks to get the. We had lots of people that had some interest in providing feedback. Give them a chance to provide their feedback, and then we can. Do last call on the list.
Okay.
Does that work?
That would work. I personally, again, I think the working group last call is the device to do that. But if you're doing the working group last call before that, then say just yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're following the same kind of pattern that we did earlier with
the pattern. But it's up to you. Basically, the same for the next topic, which is we have now an RFC.
Let me get the other topic queued. I have to take your clicker away in order to do that. So hang on a second.
It's the same slide deck, I hope.
Is it?
Should work seamlessly. I just clicked to it.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you change the deck, you're going to another topic. I saw that these two
Okay,
things.
okay. It was just name. It was had one name on it, and then the other part got
I
clipped
tried to
off.
optimize,
So,
but maybe I
yeah.
should have said that.
That's okay. We're good to go.
Okay, here we go. So the Yang module for remote attestation evidence conveyance is done and is worked, implemented, and part for other working groups content now, and so that's fine. We have a small, so to speak, addition to that. You can do something called Yang push or network subscription to a Yang module that is available, and we've done that. Yang and rats are not the best friends, so you always have to go to the Yang experts and solicit some feedback on the Yang part of the idea, and you have to explain the rats part of the idea. So it's a cross area dialogue that sometimes eats some time, I would say. But finally now we have got a final review from Dublin. We found a Yang expert there. Also the Yang doctors previously had highlighted that this is pretty much almost there. I think, as with the reference model, this is as much review we can solicit on lists and anywhere else. I have think I personally, the authors and with the help of a working group, exhausted all review options. If you have any idea what we could do before working group last call, please highlight. We don't know. We've done it. So the question is this ready for working group last call? Or should we do something that you could advise us to do?
So you said you've already got feedback from Yang doctors, right?
Yes, and again, luckily so in Dublin we met another Yang expert, especially for push at the hackathon. They presented hackathon, and I basically jumped them and didn't let them escape, so they had to do the review. And thankfully, very much so it did.
Okay. Are there any folks on the list that want to read this?
Again, I don't think there are any more interested parties that want to read this. We have asked this thrice. I think we exhausted all. Do you want to read these options?
Yeah. Okay. So Kathleen can chime in. I'm okay with starting the work group last call.
I'm as well.
Okay, so 2 weeks. So let's plan for a 2-week working group last call, and that will start when we take it to the list.
Excellent.
We'll make a call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is Yogesh has a hand up still.
Okay.
No,
Jeez,
that's
it was
an
old
artifact,
hand, yeah.
and that was us.
That was that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on to the next topic, which is evidence transformation. So that's and that's my talk. I'm going to take my chair hat off to do this, and but I can control the slides, so I'll just continue that. So evidence transformation, it refers to processing of evidence by a verifier. So in the industry, we've observed that there are several evidence formats that already exist. For example, there's something called the measurement block in the DMTF SPDM Security Protocol and Data Model standard. There's something called DICE TCB info, which is based on a TCG DICE specification that defines an extension for evidence. There's also something called concise evidence, which is, again, a TCG specification, and it is defining a CBOR encoding of evidence. It also includes a binding to SPDM, so you can kind of combine the two. And there may be others, but these are the main ones that this draft focuses on. The other thing that is that's going on is it builds on the CORIM specification draft, which defines an internal representation in air quotes, which means that there's an internal representation that is a concise representation of a set of claims and then there's some verifier appraisal processing semantics that are defined in CORIM. And so the goal is to get the evidence into that format so that the verifier can process it along with the other information that a verifier needs to process. So what this internet draft does is it defines a method for transforming or mapping the evidence formats, which are sort of varied, into this internal representation. So you have a consistent common representation. Incidentally, this draft was originally a couple of sections in the CORIM draft, but it was removed in order to streamline the CORIM effort and to make it a little more focused on the reference integrity manifest component. But in general, there could be other evidence transformation documents that are needed, just as the industry has defined a bunch. Historically, there are a bunch out there. There's vendor-specific stuff out there. So there's a general pattern that more evidence transformations might need to be defined, and so this is kind of pioneering that in a way. So here's a diagram that explains kind of a slice of the bow tie. So in the RATS architecture, it describes a section there that describes some complexity challenges facing attestation in the sense that, hey, there's a bunch of different possible formats out there, and that has to be consumed by a verifier, both from the evidence side as well as from the reference values and endorsement side. And so what happens basically is that both the evidence side and the reference values and endorsement side, they are inputted, and then there's an internal transformation step that happens into the internal representation, and then you get a set of claims. Here it's called the accepted claims, which is essentially a list of claims that have all been appraised. Okay, and it ends up being the representation of the state of the attester at some point in time. And so to give you an example of the kinds of information that's in the draft, there's a section that describes SPDM. SPDM is a protocol. It provides confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. Within that, there's different payloads, something called the measurement block. The measurement block is extensible. So you could have, for example, a concise evidence as a component of the measurement block. You could also have an EAT as a component of the measurement block. EAT as a payload within the SPDM. And EAT, of course, is extensible. So you could have concise evidence inside of an EAT, inside of an SPDM. You could also have an X509 certificate with the ICCP info. You could have an X509 certificate with CMW that then contains concise evidence. So there's a variety of different possibilities for representing evidence information as it is presented by an attester to the verifier. So any questions on the slide? All right, so status. The draft is in its 0-1 state. I see a question from Thomas, so I'll take questions.
No, Ned, I will just joining the queue. I will ask the question later. Thanks.
Okay, fine. All right, well, I'm almost done, so maybe we'll just do the questions at the end. But so this draft depends on the CORIM draft. So it's gated by that draft. It can't move faster than that draft, we don't think. But we would like to move it as closely behind it as we can. There is broad industry interest in this work. So there's work in the DMTF, the TCG, and OCP, and a variety of vendors that are following it. And there is implementation support for it. So Verizon project, and there are other vendor, proprietary or specific products that are following it. So the question is, can we adopt this? So now we'll take questions.
Okay, Thomas here. Okay, so this is a requirement that Quorum creates for all evidence formats that want to be appraised by a Quorum verifier, right? So I would expect that a bunch of similar documents will pop up in the future to address this same problem. And I have a couple of questions here. One is about scope. What goes into this document and what doesn't? Or what kind of evidence formats are genuine to these and what are not? And the second question is about adoption, but in a more general sense. And this is what do we want to do with future documents that are similar to this? Are they going to be also going through working group adoption, or will be dealt with as independent stream documents, or what is your ideas about this, strategically speaking?
So the first question is, what's the scope? Why this set? And the main reason is this is the set that is being, it's basically the set that the industry cares about, outside of the IETF, and so we want to be, supportive of that. The rest of the other industry work that's going on. There could be others, obviously. We don't think that we don't think that the pain point for creating another draft to say I've found evidence format foobar and we should do this. There's no reason why that draft couldn't be created and tracked and so forth. I don't think that it makes sense to slow down this draft because there might be, another one coming along that needs to be defined. So it just ends up being, what's the most pragmatic way to move things forward in a reasonable, fashion.
Correct. So, because a potentially alternative way to deal with this would be that the Quorum endorsement profile document can define that kind of transformations within the scope of that document, right? So if you define a DMTF Quorum profile, then you're going to have to describe how the DMTF evidence is mapped as an internal Quorum artifact. And so on.
And that's exactly what's in this draft. So it builds on what's already written in the Quorum draft. It doesn't redefine it. It follows it. So
is this also describing the DMTF in Quorum profile? Because that was my question.
What question? I'm not sure if I understand the question. What do you mean by the DMTF Quorum profile?
So if DMTF is using Quorum, then it must define somehow the Quorum profile that suits the DMTF data format, right?
So DMTF defines measurement block, and that's it. They don't define a Quorum. But the other organizations, TCG, OCP, they have evidence formats that they are relying on SPDM as their conveyance mechanism, right? It just carries the water. Yeah. So
compared to, for example, the CCA endorsement profile or the PSA endorsement profile, these are different, right? That's why they are bundled.
Those are different. Here. Yeah, those are different. Those are different documents.
Okay. So would you suggest us to continue doing this transformation mapping in the endorsement drafts that we have for open for
no, because
PCA? Or
I mean, if there's a profile is going to define something that's profile specific, and there may be a need for profile specific mapping of something that, for example, a profile might extend a standard, and in which case that extension might require some mapping, in which case it's appropriate to put that mapping in the profile for that extension. This draft is focusing on the standards that have been published by these organizations and just working with what's already a standard, not a profile.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Osama. Or
So just
Thomas, you're out. Osama's in, yeah.
So just a scoping question. Is TLS protocol intentionally out of scope, or are you saying that there is no industry interest in TLS?
I didn't include TLS because TLS didn't come with a measurement block structure already. It wasn't already designed for, it didn't define already some measurement type, an evidence type.
But by the same way, X9 does not come with a predefined attestation evidence thing, right? So this is something that you add to X509. Similarly, that's
yeah, it's a certificate extension.
Right. So
yeah.
X509 by default does not come with that, right? So attested TLS would be something on the same line to what you add to X509. So I'm trying to understand what's the reason of removing TLS from the scope. Is this?
There's no reason. It wasn't removed from the scope. It would be fine, like in the previous slide, it would be fine to say as one of the use cases. I'm going to try to go back. It's reasonable. It would be fine to say, like if I wrap TLS around the X509 DICE TCP info, that would be a reasonable thing to do. But the reason I didn't was because X509 already is a signature format, and so having TLS around X509, it's doubly signed. Right.
Yes, but there are other ways of providing evidence other than X509. X509 is not the only way of providing that evidence, right?
I understand. The focus is not on the focus is not on the the signing wrapper. That's basically you verify the wrapper and you throw it away. And then what's transformed is just the evidence format. So it's what's inside that is transformed. All the other stuff is essentially stripped off and thrown away, except for one bit, which is the authority, a representation of the key that did the signing. So there's something called authority, which is represented in the internal representation. That's retained, but otherwise you strip all that off. There's nothing really interesting in terms of that outer layer as far as evidence goes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Monty?
Hey, Monty, beyond identity. Back on that same topic again, the canonical event log seems to be blatantly missing from this. Is there a reason for that?
It could be added. It's not, I wouldn't say it's missing. The part that we have to talk about is, does it make sense to be in this draft versus some other one that focuses specifically on TPM and the formats that TPM supports?
Okay, so
that's I mean, it's another slice of the bow tie. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to really figure out why this would not be appear to these in this draft, and versus why it would be a separate draft. I don't care.
I think it's needed. I don't know if it makes sense to put it in here, but if you're interested in working on another one, I'm happy to help with that too.
I'll take a look at this. This just seems like a logical extension to
Yeah, I would just say let's scope it out and see if it's going to slow it
Right.
down at all.
Okay, all right.
But
Thanks.
nothing,
Yeah,
nothing
I'll
philosophically
take the-
opposed to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take the action to have a look at this.
Okay, Hank. I can't hear you.
I'm not in the mic yet. Hi, I'm Hank. We are preparing a quorum profile for the TPM IMA remote attestation transformation. There's some transformation in there, and that would include CEL. So maybe that already helps a little bit. Because the quorum profile specifically for TCG-based evidence that is not DICE, and helping with the verifier behavior there as a quorum profile. Maybe that's enough to have it there. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they can share the content somehow. I don't know.
Okay. This seems like it's tagged on to Monty's comment.
But Monty, nobody can hear you right now. What do you want to? Okay, sure. Perfect. So Monty just highlighted that when we do something specifically with TCG, TPM, and IMA, we should include Steve Sefford, David Sefford, and Mimi, basically the people maintaining IMA in the Linux kernel, and make them basically part of the development. And that seems very, very fair. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm gonna I'm gonna assert chairness here for a second, just because I'm over time. But I do want to, so I want to lock the queue, but maybe we can turn it over to Kathleen to just kind of finalize the adoption question.
Okay, hold on a moment. Okay, the question is there. And we have someone in the queue. Monty, are you in the queue for this? For adoption or for a question? Oh, he's out of the queue. Thank you. Okay, so it's slowing down. Oh, okay, thank you. We'll give it one more minute. All right, anyone else want to weigh in on the show of hands for adoption? Okay. Oh, I keep thinking we're done and another one comes in. All right, great. It looks to me like it's a yes, with 8 having no opinion, no no's, and 13 yes. $14 yes. All right. Oh, 15. Okay, I think it's yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, turn your head back on. And next up is mud-based rats resource discovery. Hank.
Hi, this is Hank. Maybe some participants remember this. Back in the days, and I want to say 2020, when we were all starting to write the mud IDs, we started a mud-based resource discovery for rats. But then events overtook some priorities, I want to say, and now with other working groups starting to actually really rely on some of the RAT's roles and the information and concept message flows between them, discovering sources of those messages is a actual requirement. So the base scenario in this ID hasn't changed since back in the day. So a mud URI comes with an attester at the very minimum. And this URI is temper evident because it's baked into some types of trusted documents. And the most obvious one back in 2020 was a secure device identifier. That's strongly inspired by the network equipment working group in TCG, for example, but also a lot of other domains use these kind of X509 device certificates, I want to say. So that's already defined how to use in the original MUD RFC. So that's why this is called batteries are already included. So you know how to do it. You just have to understand that this is an option and how to use that option. Now, 5 years later, back in the days, EAT was a little bit smaller. It now is almost on the finish line. And we added some text how to embed a MUD URI in EAT to convey that to other parties. Which is I think actually a very good alternative option, because EAT is the go-to vehicle here in Reds when we start something new and don't inherit something old, like an LDEF ID or something. There can be other options. There are only these two in the unadopted ID right now. And yeah, well, of course, the MUD URI serves a purpose. So that purpose is that that there's a MUD file under control of the authority that baked that trusted document. For example, an endorsement key certificate for the attester, or something else like the endorsement EAT. A quorum would be that other alternative. So quorum could be in that list. And now we have to we have a starting set of resources, like where's my verifiers, which out of the box verifiers are recommended for this attester. This is a manufacturer's usage description how to praise the trustworthiness of a tester, but there can be more things. Where do I find my endorsements for this? Where do I find my reference values for this? So identifying actually sources and maybe even also describing the authentication requirements for them would be part of a MUD file. And that's basically also the scope of work as a working group item. We have a Yang-based MUD file structure because that is how MUD started. I will come to that in a second. And those structures have to be updated. And I think that's a working group action, because the working group has to decide what's really relevant to RATs, and maybe we can facilitate some outside requirements from forming working groups or existing working groups. So I think that is a working group activity. We might have to put some text in how that helps with discovery, how this is lightweight, and how is this not called home. That is basically expositional text, that is editorial, not really for the specification, but for the understanding and guidance how to apply this document. I think that's a workgroup task, because we can just come from one requirement and say that's all. And then a more daring third item is that we can again talk, for example, with Elliot in concert. All this has been done with Elliot, by the way. Elliot wrote the Yang file, basically, the layout, the MUD file. But there can be other representations for it. It's okay to have JSON now. And if that is okay, maybe EAT can be a mud file. That's the experimental part. So I want to have something stable early, but again, that could be a working group decision to explore that. And I think these are all explorational efforts that are working group items, and that is not a big surprise, resulted in a ask if we could adopt this now. There's a little bit of a gap between the 00 and the 01. The data tracker shows that. and we have floated it back in the days in OPSA. New mud places might become IoT ops and so on. And again, this is just a summary of what to do, more conceptual method types. It has matured a lot, more format exploration. And for example, there's a selected disclosure, CWT now, that will become an RFC in the foreseeable future. And that would be because a mud file is typically not authenticated for access, it's on the open internet. And maybe you want to have some inline access control. You could use selective disclosure for that. So if EAT would become an option, well, maybe you have certain fields that are only disclosed to certain parties. Again, that is a scoping question that I don't want to prescribe at any point here. I think that's also a working group item. And that's why I'm here to ask if a MUD option for rats is now of interest to the working group. Basically. And I think that's all, right? Yeah, this is my last slide. And Thomas, sorry.
It seems like I haven't worked into this in details, but skimming the draft, it looks like a very useful addition to the RATS toolbox to me. So I wouldn't be against adoption at all. On the contrary.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you have read one MUD draft, it kind of feels like we have read all of them. They are very similar. I mean, there's no big revolution here. It's just logistics, right? We have to write it up and make it specific, and that's a working group task, I think. Handing over to the chairs.
Okay, so I want to get a read on how well read this is. You said it was a 00 draft, or?
Yeah, the 00 draft is like 4 years old. And I wouldn't claim that anybody remembers that.
Okay.
So, but it is a MUD ID, so the complexity is not high. So it's more like, do we want MUD here or not? I think that's a better question than even have you read it, but because, but Michael?
Hi, Michael Richardson. Mike, I guess for those who haven't read it or thinking read it, this is basically just a, here's a good place to get pointers to the stuff that will help you deal with the rest of the stuff.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not controversial, except that you may have some questions about transitive trust through all of the different processes. And I think that's where the bulk of the document is. And I still don't remember why I suggested SD caught. And, but I might remember that soon.
No. Yeah, but the argument was that if you have an unauthenticated internet, like the open internet, you might not want to expose everything to everybody. And the SD, the selective disclosure comes in. But again, that has to be finished first, so I wouldn't like talk over the bear that if you haven't caught it yet.
All right, so I'm gonna do just a quick poll. So I put a adopt MUD draft, just chime in on what you're thinking.
So, Ned, what I'm wondering is, I do see use for it, but we have a lot of drafts we're working on right now. So we may want to say, do we want this now or in the future based on bandwidth, as opposed to a straight yes, no? Because I think the answer might be different.
Yeah, let's
right?
do the.
So I think there's
let's
use
do the yes,
for it.
no,
But...
and then we can do the now versus later. Does that work?
Okay.
And then
Great.
we're moving network description and sorry, what was it? No, we are moving 2 items that are added out, like UCCS is out, but it's still not a draft. So, but it's basically in the editor queue, and endorsement is moving out, and some third item that just hasn't come to me. So we're making some space right now. So this is moving.
Please vote if you're going to vote. I'm going to give it maybe 30 seconds more.
Kathleen, it's Michael at the mic. Of course, it's up to you, chairs, to when and to adopt it. You can take our opinion and then sit on your hands for 6 months because there's no time. That's up to you, and it's your prerogative. So do that.
Yeah, it also would be good to have the groups feel, right? Because like this week, I didn't present my draft and AJ didn't present it. So there are other drafts too.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So it looks like it's even. Looks like last I saw was 10 were in favor and 10 had no opinion. So let's ask the next question. Okay. Why is this not working?
And while you bring up the other polls, so there also is, of course, the option to bring mud work to the mud working group, which is ops area working group right now. But I don't think they are a good place where the experts are to do the actual mud file. That's why the current proposal was the other way around. And here we go.
Please vote.
So the question is to wait. If you want to wait,
vote.
you say yes.
Yeah.
If you want it now, you say no.
Yeah. We're running short on time. I'm going to give it 15 seconds.
No, yep. And thank you for this. I think this question probably helped to show that there is interest in the draft, just that we need a little bit more time. So I'm glad we asked this extra question because we might not have gotten the yes on the adoption call, which would have left Hank with more questions.
Yep.
Sure.
And Michael.
Then my question is, what actions should the authors take?
Can you nudge us again in like 6 months?
Elliot has the running code, so that's not the problem, I think.
You can still make progress. You can go to a 0-1 draft and make progress, right?
Absolutely. And then nudge us in 6 months?
Yeah. Sounds reasonable.
So you didn't get that.
Nudge us in 6 months?
6 months for a mud ID? Well, I would rather go to OPSA and try it there, to be honest, because I wouldn't know what we as individuals would decide that would not overturn by the working group eventually. So what benefit do we gain?
So we have, I mean, we're saying 9 say wait, 6 say don't wait, 7 no opinions.
But what should we do in the 6 months? I'm at a loss a little bit.
All right. So how many outstanding drafts do you have at the moment, Hank?
So you mean drafts that
Across
have not
the
moved
whole
to a
IETF.
stage where I don't have a control anymore? That's 5.
In this working group or across the IETF?
In this working group. Yeah, but they're moving well. I'm not the sole author, though. We are always teams, like so when I work.
I'm going to propose that we move the discussion to the list so that we have time for one more item.
Yeah, if you could start a discussion about that in the list, that would be great. Again, also ideas what should be discussed before a adoption. Because I'm literally out of ideas. I will highlight about things that should be working group items. That makes sense. But if you have some hints or suggestions what could happen before, that would be great. Because otherwise we're just running blind somehow with scissors. And
Those are all great questions, Hank, and we don't have time to deal with it right now. So we're going to take it to the list and continue the conversation there. And let's give 5 minutes to Thomas.
I try to be as quick as possible. Next, please. As I think this is about R4C, and here's a combo presentation. Usual quick recap: R4C is an info and data model for attestation results, as you all know, and ER is an e-profile for attestation results that is based on R4C. I have a presentation with details linked into the slide deck if you want to take a deeper look. Next, please. Okay, so what's new? We stopped development of R4C for a while we were trying to get some implementation experience. What has been done in this new iteration of the draft is that we added a CBOR and JSON data model inside R4C. So we have a bit of data model there regarding the core components. So we have new section 3 with 4 subsections: one for the trustworthiness vector, one for the trustworthiness years, one for the verifier ID, and then we have the whole of CDDL that basically creates JSON and CBOR serializations out of it. This allows us to share the core R4C types with actual attestation result formats. Next, please. We have a couple of hot topics on the table at the moment. One is looking at the trustworthiness vector and doing a bit of splitting in terms of buckets. We want to have the boot time and runtime separate in the executables to be able to be more precise about what we're actually appraising. And Ned raised another issue about better improvements around verifier identification, so fire grain identifications claim for the verifier. Next, please. Regarding ER, so the attestation result format based on R4C, we have done some implementation exercise. We have exercised a few application domains: confidential computing, attestation in IoT, and network equipment are 3 of them. We have libraries, we have running code in various languages, so Rust, Golang, and Python, which is now in progress, and we have integrated it into a few open source verifiers, including Verizon, Trusty, and now Keylime. Yes, next, please. So what do we want to do? We want to continue collecting requirements and feedback. So refine the info model. And your feedback is critical here. And so please take a look at section 2.3.4 of R4C and tell us if we are having the right things there, we have the right buckets, we have the right claims. And yes, please. Next one. Is a question about adopting here. So there's been discussion on the mailing list, not a clear call for adoption, but some discussion regarding that. And Kathleen, Carl, and MCR, if I remember correctly, were positive about this. So we want to ask, more explicitly the working group whether they want to adopt this draft or not. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Michael's on the queue.
Hi, Michael here. Thomas, a bunch of your slides said AR4SI, not EAR. I don't know if that's a typo in your slides or just I'm confused about what we're talking about.
I might have confused you because I have mixed 2 topics, right? So
okay, so you were speaking about 2 things. Good. I thought that's where we're going. The EAR stuff is really important to me. I think it's really important to Nazar. I don't quite know. There's some bits and pieces in there that I really don't know how to do yet, and EAR doesn't yet tell me how to do it. So to me, it's really important that we adopt it and figure it all out. Even though I am a co-author on the previous document, I think this one's more important. So that's
Thank you
just
very
my,
much.
yeah.
Hank? And we have,
Yeah,
we
this is
quickly,
Hank. Just
we are out of
highlighting
time.
that A4Z is an adopted ID, but it can't work without ear. So that's like a thing maybe that should be highlighted.
Okay, Kathleen?
Yes, there is a poll going if anyone wants to weigh in on adopting the ear draft. And then without a hat on, it also helps the posture assessment draft.
Thanks very much, Kathleen and Hank. So what we do, chairs?
Phil,
It looks pretty
we're
clear
running the
towards
poll.
adoption. If there's any no's, get up at the mic right away. So it looks like a yes to me.
Yeah.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great meeting.
All right.
You
Thank
too.
you, folks.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, bye.